Good evening, everybody. This is the Cleveland Heights City Council Public Safety and Health Committee meeting for February 23rd, 2026, 7 p.m. I'd like to call the roll. Jim Posh, I'm the chair. We have the vice chair, Joe DeWitt Foy. Here. And we have member Craig Cobb with us. We have council member Gail Larson, Jessica Cohn, Mayor Jim Petrus, Gary Benjamin, two members from the Legal Aid Society, Katie Feldman and Lisa
Sklowinski.
Thank you, and Councilmember Sheriff.
It's a tongue twister.
Sarah Stone.
Thank you.
Not Sharon Stone.
No.
Sarah Stone.
No.
I have this like. I'll do better than that. And we also have Michael Reese, our city administrator, joining us too today. We have two agenda items. The first one is the council and the city collaboration with nonprofits supporting Cleveland Heights immigration population. A lot of this work was done and coordinated this week by Councilmember Cohn. I am going to let her lead that agenda first tonight.
Sure. So I want to just thank Legal Aid Society, Katie and Lisa, and also Gary, who's here from AMIS, A-M-I-S, another immigrant support nonprofit. Ann Hill was hoping to come but had to send her regrets at the last
I'm her
minute.
regrets. Sorry I had to go.
Sent her personal for her regrets. No, this is part of, I think, of our ongoing effort as a city to provide more resources to our residents around what recourse there is for them as immigrants, what supports there are within the broader Cleveland community, and in particular, the group that's been raising awareness for us in the city is Cleveland Heights for Immigrant Rights. So this is an outgrowth of the conversations we've been having with them as well. And what I've come to understand as I've talked with a lot of groups and folks passionate about this issue is that every organization does something slightly different. And so our hope for tonight is to have Legal Aid and AMIS share about what they do and what resources they provide. It's for us as council members, if we hear from residents that we can direct them to resources. Confirm, please. I think we talked about this, that we will add on we have a great resources page on the website now, and we'll be able to include links for these organizations as well. And also Todd Walburn was hoping to join us this evening, who's the head of our Mayor's Action Center. I'm not sure if he's on Zoom, but obviously this is going to be recorded and this will be really helpful to the city staff as well to be able to understand how they can direct residents to resources as needed. So I want to stop there and I think we're going to have Legal Aid share first.
Great. So first, thank you all for having us and thank you for the invitation. So I'm Katie Feldman. I'm an attorney at Legal Aid. I've been there a little bit over 18 years in a few different roles. My current role is I manage a practice group at Legal Aid. So we're split into practice groups the same way that law firms are. Our practice group that I manage is a little bit of a mishmash. It's our immigration practice, our public benefits,
Can
and
you
our
use
education.
your mouse and click that blue button?
Oh, yes, sorry.
There's
Yes,
Todd.
I have the power to people. So the practice group I manage, it's called Health and Opportunity. And like I said, it includes our immigration practice, our education law practice, and our public benefits practice. I myself am not an immigration lawyer. My background's in education law, but like I said, I manage this group that includes our immigration practice. So my colleagues like Lisa and our other immigration attorneys and paralegals have educated me over the years, and now I can at least understand when they talk in numbers and I know what they're talking about. So again, thank you for having us. Lisa is a supervising attorney within our practice group, and she is a full-time immigration lawyer. And so if anybody has technical questions, she will be great to answer those. So Wanted to give you just a little bit of information about what Legal Aid is to start, so you have kind of a picture of our organization and where we fit within it and what we focus on. So this is our mission statement. We secure justice, equity, and access to opportunity for and with people who have low incomes through passionate legal representation and advocacy for systemic change. I'd like to point to a few things here. One is that we work for and with our clients. We see that as a big part of our mission, that we are not just we're not centering ourselves in the role, we're centering our clients in our role and their goals for their legal case. And so we see that we're working with our clients and with the community and not just for them. You'll see that low incomes is included there. We'll talk about it in a second, but all of our clients have to meet certain income and asset restrictions, but our services are completely free. None of our clients pay for their legal services that they get from Legal Aid. And finally, the last part of the mission statement I like to point out is that not only do we do representation, we also advocate for systemic change, as we'll talk a little bit more about. Our resources are finite and limited, and so we know that advocating for systemic change is where we get kind of, the best bang for the buck. We can do lots of individual representation, but if we can solve a systemic problem that will affect more than the people that make it to Legal Aid's doorstep, that's really where we're getting the biggest impact. So here are our 5 counties that we cover in Northeast Ohio. So if you look here at the full picture of the state of Ohio, you can see we have the northeast corner here. Every county, all 80 some counties in the state of Ohio, are covered by a legal aid organization. So the organization that Lisa and I work for, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, covers these 5 counties. So we are responsible for providing legal aid services in Lorain, Cuyahoga, Lake Geauga, and Ashtabula counties. We only do civil legal services at Legal Aid. We do not do any criminal work. Here in the state of Ohio, there's a public defender, or multiple public defender's offices. Each county determines whether they're going to have public defender or appointed counsel or some combination of both for criminal help, but that is not us. We do not do any criminal work at Legal Aid. Like I mentioned, all of our clients must have low income and assets to qualify for us. They must reside in our service area. And relevant to this conversation, we have regulations, federal regulations that we must follow in terms of who we serve. And as it relates to non-citizens, it does not equate to those who are legal in the country and those who are not. That's not our eligibility criteria. We'll get into it a little bit more, but generally speaking, our immigration practice really falls within the regulation that allows us to serve those who have been the victim of a crime or violence. And that's where we prioritize our immigration practice, and we can assist those who have no legal status in the US, but who have been the victim of a crime or violence. And that could have happened here in the United States, it could have happened in their home country, or somewhere in between. Like I mentioned, our services are completely free. To give you a little bit of understanding of who we serve in terms of our income requirements, we can go up to 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So this chart shows just 100%, but for instance, if there was a household of 2 people, their income can roughly go up to about $43,000 and be eligible for legal aid. And if they make more than that, then we have a couple exceptions, but generally speaking, that's the income eligibility that our intake group is looking at when they're talking with folks. So these numbers are from a national study in 2022 looking at the justice gap in this country. So the first number, the 74%, is showing the percentage of low-income households who experienced at least one civil legal problem in the last year. And then the bottom number is kind of the more important number to me, that 92% of those households received inadequate or no legal help for that civil legal problem. So despite the fact that there are legal aids around the country, and here in Ohio, the stark reality is that there are a lot of people that we cannot serve. Locally, for our legal aid, we get over 20,000 calls for help a year, and we have to turn away more than half of those people that contact us because we simply just do not have the resources to serve everybody looking for assistance. So to determine who we're going to help and where we can make the most impact, we set priorities and what we call case acceptance guidelines for each of the areas that we practice in. So the one that was really made it clear to me when I joined legal aid, and I think is the example that I still fall back on to explain to people about setting these priorities, is our family law group. So our family law group does divorces and child custody and child support issues. And if all of us, all the attorneys at legal aid, were doing only family law, we would never be able to serve the need in our 5-county service area. And so our family law group, as I put on here, is really focused on safety and specifically for domestic violence survivors. So we do the divorces, the custody, the child support, but focused on households where people's safety is at risk. And so within each of the practice areas that we practice, we similarly set those type of priorities put our limited resources in the space where we feel that we can make the most difference and that we're really getting at something fundamental for the household. Also, I just wanted to list all of these for you so you get an understanding about what all the different practice areas that legal aid can handle, and especially when you're talking about resources for your constituents and residents of Cleveland Heights. Know that even though we're here today to talk about immigration, we have colleagues who are working in all of these different areas. And I know we've partnered with Cleveland Heights on housing work and are continuing to do that. So it's just something to think about as you're hearing from residents that we're there to help with a number of civil legal needs. So our immigration practice, subject to all of our eligibility guidelines, what I was just talking about in terms of our service area and income and asset and non-citizen eligibility. Everybody that comes to legal aid goes through an intake. They first go talk with an intake specialist who determines their eligibility for our services and also gets information about the type of legal issue that they're have reached out to us about. Within our immigration practice, similar to what I just talked about with our family law, safety is really our priority. That's where we're focusing our limited resources in terms of our immigration work. Typically our caseloads include asylum cases, helping people with U visas, which is a visa available to somebody who's been the victim of a crime in the US and then assisted with the prosecution or investigation of the crime. A T visa are for survivors of human trafficking. VAWA, we use VAWA to refer to immigration relief for those who are married to a US citizen and have been battered by that US citizen spouse. SIJS is Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. That's for minors who have been abused or neglected by a family or by a parent, and that would be dangerous for them to return to their home country. And then we also assist with adjustment of status for anybody who has one of these and then becomes eligible for a green card. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Chair,
What about those who have been detained by the federal agencies and need help that you haven't even connected with yet?
That we haven't connected with yet.
If they haven't come through any of your other.
Right, so we do, we do help people in immigration detention. Sometimes we've seen family members who've contacted us for and done the intake for them, or friends even. So yes, we have had clients who are in detention. I think we only have one currently who is detained. But we are looking for, are they eligible for us and what immigration relief are they eligible for? Yeah. And for all of these, by the way, we have people who are applying for asylum through kind of an affirmative process, going through the administrative process, administrative agency and process to apply for asylum. We also have people who are in removal proceedings and applying for asylum through the court. So we're in immigration court as well as doing affirmative filings.
Can I ask you how many immigration court cases you have active, not right now, out of your whole client base? How much of a piece of your practice is that?
Let me
Oh, you're
do the
gonna get to that.
calculation while you
Yeah.
continue the presentation. I'll have to think.
Yeah. So we do individual cases. We also do community education and outreach. We are happy to talk about doing Know Your Rights presentations if that's something that you think would be useful in the community. Those presentations could be about knowing your rights if ICE knocks on your door. It could be about understanding the immigration process. We do these presentations on a number of different topics. Especially right now, we're thinking about how we're advertising these type of presentations. Typically, we're doing them with a trusted community partner who is organizing a group that they already have to attend this rather than putting it up on our website the way that we do with other presentations. We also have to think about interpreters. If, which group are we doing it for? And is there a specific language that we could focus this one on? So we're not having 8 interpreters interpret a presentation into 8 different languages and having an 8-hour presentation because of that. So we're just trying to be very thoughtful about how we're doing these activities. We have a number of resources on our website, and we are also part of a group of Ohio legal services that have developed the Ohio Legal Help website, which has information and forms on that as well. I've talked about this already, but we provide a variety of types of services to our clients. So direct representation, legal advice. We assist self-represented litigants or pro se litigants. We do community education and outreach, and are always looking at what systems and policies we can influence. There are 2 primary ways that people get to us. One is a phone intake and one is an online intake. Our phone intakes, here are our hours. We have a toll-free number, and we are absolutely committed to engaging professional interpreters, not only in the intake process, but throughout our representation of the case. We have a number of attorneys and paralegals who speak Spanish. For all other languages, we get interpreters involved. We also have bilingual intake specialists in Spanish that we direct Spanish speakers to for their intakes. And like I said, any other language where we have a phone language interpretation service for the intake process. And then when an attorney is assigned, they're typically getting an in-person interpreter there with them. And again, all professional interpreters. We're not asking for friends or family members to interpret. And we take our language access policy pretty seriously at Legal Aid. So I try to provide that assurance to folks who may be contacting us. And then we also have an online intake process. And so this is great for people who are not necessarily available during the hours that our phone intake is available. Right now, that online intake process is only available in English and Spanish. Takes about 10 to 20 minutes to fill out the form. Then the applicant does have to finish out the process with a call from our intake specialist. And they'll typically get that within 2 business days. And the online intake is available at our website, lasclev.org, and there's an apply for help button right at the top of the page that gets you to the online intake form. And that's what we have. And I know I was told 8 minutes, and I have a feeling I've already gone well over that, so I apologize. But I'm happy to talk more. We've worked with AMI. AMI has been a great partner, especially when our clients haven't had the resources to pay filing fees or for the necessary medical exams for certain immigration forms. So we appreciate all that you are doing. Yes, it is very expensive and keeps getting more expensive. For instance, for our clients who've applied for asylum in the past, when they were getting their work permit to apply for their work permit, it used to be free. and now it's $550 per family member. So we see large families of 6 people, everybody needs their work permit, and all of a sudden it went from $0 to, I can't do the math, but thousands for that household who are already by definition low income because they've come to legal aid. So organizations like me have been really essential to our work. So we appreciate that.
And to answer your good question very quickly, and to give some context as well, which lawyers love to do. We have 3 immigration attorneys, and then 1 who also does immigration work, but through a medical legal partnership. So she certainly does, but has her own like intake source. And then we also work with 2 paralegals. So out of that group, we have anywhere from 10 to 15 people that we're helping in immigration court at a time between the 3 of us. But the rules have recently changed where we're giving full representation to those people like every step of the way, but we can also help people with some filings in a limited kind of way, like apply for asylum and turn it in and then don't go to the full court. So we try to help as many people as we can through a combination of both of those options.
Can I clarify, there was a stat on here that was something like 92% don't receive adequate services, and then you referenced about half of the people that contact Legal Aid Cleveland. Could you just provide context for those 2 numbers?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even reach out.
And that's what this is referring to.
So this is a national number, by the way. So this isn't local. This is I think this was done by LSC. LSC 2022 is the Legal Services Corporation, and that is the organization that gets an appropriation by Congress to then distribute to legal aids around the country. So part of our budget comes from LSC funds, and they do these studies occasionally to look at how big is this justice gap? Who's not getting served out there?
And then, so you referenced about 50% of the people that contact you're unable to help.
Right.
Can you provide some context around that? Is that capacity? Is that eligibility?
So that's everything. That's both of those things. So it's maybe they're not eligible for our services, but largely it's about capacity. And I'll say, and it was something that we didn't talk about here, but another way that we serve people, or 2 other ways that we serve people. 1, we're doing brief advice clinics in the community almost on a weekly basis, and that's on our website. And those are happening all across our 5-county service area. We also have a volunteer lawyers program where we're engaging private attorneys to either staff those clinics, staff the brief advice clinics, or take cases for full representation. So the 50% that we're helping are getting helped in a variety of ways, not just by our staff, not just in terms of full representation. That also includes our advice cases, our clinics, and what our volunteers are assisting with.
And then of the clients you're assisting, I imagine this sort of depends, but are there limitations in terms of the courts or the stages? So whether you can follow them through the appeals process or whether you can access all courts?
Yeah, good question. We just within the immigration practice, not the full list that Katie put, we try to stick with people the whole way through. Like for people like who are not US citizens, not from here, it's difficult for them to complete everything. So we also try to, start with them and end with them, except for what I was saying about filing the application, but that's a newer tool that's available to us. And to that point, so then the process takes many years. Like the longest client that I had was 8 years, and I spent 800 hours on that case. And luckily she got the thing that we applied for after all of that. But I've had the range of clients that I've had open cases for is anywhere from like 2019 to 2025.
And those wait times are just getting longer and longer. Yeah. For instance, the U visas I was talking about that are for people who are victims of crime, there are a certain number of those that can be given out each year. And I think the current number that I'm hearing is you file now, it's 20 to 30 years before you're going to get your U visa. Yeah. And I said I was not an immigration practitioner. I did a few cases 15 years ago, and I did a U visa then, and it was 2 years to get your U visa, and now, decades you're waiting.
So good question. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Do you have advice clinics coming up for immigration? And how can we get that information out?
Yeah, so we do. We are not advertising the location or the date publicly. The way people get into it is through our intake. So they'll do an intake and be identified as eligible for our services. And we'll get information about that clinic and get an appointment at that clinic, sorry.
But it's in the
So-
spring.
Yeah, this spring, yeah.
I mean, when the snow's all gone.
Who knows?
Good
It's
question. Yeah.
it's Cleveland.
We hope so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So everything flows through our intake.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Should get a little description of what AMI does and
Sure. AMI started in 2019 because Melody and I took in a Haitian immigrant that Gail knows well. She was on the bus with us when we went to Ann Arbor to get him out of detention. And we realized at some point that new immigrants need money. They can't really get jobs without a work permit. You can get off the books kind of jobs, but they don't really support you. They don't really have good places to live. A lot of times they had a family and kids. So we have actually 2 of the 4 founders of AMI are here, Melody and I, and Ann, who sent her regrets, and the 4th was Molly Rudnick from Heights Temple. And we organized our, I did the paperwork, we filed it. It's something I do for social change efforts, and I've done it in both Detroit and here. It started nonprofits kind of carry the ball on it. So we decided to fund different needs people have, particularly while they're trying to get their work permit, which used to take a few months and now takes longer. And today, just to jump ahead, we're having a fundraiser on April 21st, by the way. Go to our website. It's AMIS, Ohio.org. AMI is French for friends. We stole the Haitian national language and created a name for our organization. We pay rent. We provide food. We'll give people an allowance so they can get clothes. We've branched out into service type things that people need, like driving them places. We have, I don't know how many, 200 or 300 volunteers that go to take people to jobs if they get a job, or to take people to the store if they need to go to the store. The doctor is a big one. We've been doing that now for 3 or 4 years. I think last month we served 100 immigrants or thereabouts and handed out $25,000 in support. Our budget's in the $300,000 range. What we've been finding is more and more people are coming to us because the breadwinner's in detention. And we partially fund an organization called Auxilio, which does habeas corpus work. And because the federal government has said no more bonds, we used to be able to bond people out of detention. You'd go down there, you'd have a hearing, you'd pay it, you'd give them some money, and they could come home with you. They don't do that anymore. They've canceled all that effort. And you guys don't do habeas, or do you?
We haven't yet,
Yeah,
but
we haven't had to yet.
we'll have to, and we will
can,
then.
though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. So we fund this group, which only does habeas corpus actions, and that's what we think is really needed right now, is money to fund lawyers to get people out of detention. And it's also important to plan ahead. Melody, on the way back from Detroit, was reading an article to me today, because I was driving. It's my book on tape here. They're gonna hire, 10,000 more?
10,000
More agents. They've got 3,000 coming out of training like tomorrow. And they got 10,000 more going through the system. They've already got too damn many, and they don't train them well. That's why they shoot people. So they're gonna have to put them somewhere. And Ohio has been lucky in one sense. There's only been one, they called it, I think, the Buckeye campaign or something like that, where they did arrest, put in detention a little over 200 Ohio immigrants. Most of them eventually got out or got deported.
In Columbus.
Mostly Columbus, but they got some people up here. And of course, we had the cilantro issue here. The other thing we do is that I'm a retired lawyer. I didn't do any immigration work as an attorney, but I was the advocacy director at Community Legal Aid down in Akron. We had 8 counties. We did all that work. And it's good to use legal aid. So if you're gonna think about money, one of the ways to handle it is to hand legal aid a check and ask them to represent Cleveland Heights people with that money. That's something I know we used to do with block grant money all the time. And I think you can do it with just a grant in the general funds too. So I don't know if you want to know more about us. We have a long history, and we one of our people got out of jail, out of detention after 4 months in a November case in front of Judge Polster. The guy we fund did a habeas action and got Jonas out. And I thought it was a really good effort and a really good argument, because what he came up with was they're putting people in detention and just leaving them there and not deporting them. So they're sitting there and they can't make money, they can't support their families. So the families are coming to us, and we're supporting them, and we're going to continue doing that. And the breadwinners just sitting there when they could be making money, paying taxes and paying the bills and doing everything they need to do. But this government doesn't care about that. So Judge Polster found that if you take somebody in and you put them in detention and you're going to deport them, you can't do that. You gotta leave them on the street, especially if they've been following the rules. This is a guy who's reported every time. In fact, he reported for his regular ICE reporting with 3 of our people, including the lawyer, with him when they took him. So we do that too, in case there's, just to make sure nothing bad goes on, because you have to realize that if you're reporting these days, it doesn't mean they're not going to take you, even when you're legal. So people on TPS have to report. That even if they have TPS, we expect crimes to happen by ICE. But I think we've got to prepare. And having some kind of system set up to deal with these kinds of issues is going to be good, because some of those 13,000 new agents are probably going to end up here. I don't know where else they'd send them. They've already covered the rest of the country.
They're making more detention centers.
They are.
Buying warehouses.
In Ohio, there's one coming up. Yeah. And the one in Youngstown's really bad.
So this is the core problem we have. I mean, we're a city, we're a municipality, we plow snow, we have some form of social services that we do provide. I mean, to the point, we're not in this business. And we don't have the bandwidth to like create an immigration department that can help and do this. And our law department is flooded with work. I mean, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks.
I'm sure Bill wants more work.
Well, it's the nature of the gig, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone by saying it. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of catch up that's going on right now in our city. Is we really haven't been paying attention to business for the last couple of years, and now we are. But here we are with this situation in our country, which we all I think agree is horrible. What can we do? What can we bite off? How can we help? How can we support our resident immigrants and protect them? What can we do? There's nobody here within the city walls that works for the city that has that role.
One answer is to figure out what the need is. I know that AMI has at least 3 families of immigrants in Cleveland Heights, and I think I only know the 3 I know. There's people in detention we're supporting right now are from Cleveland generally. So that wouldn't be on you guys, I don't think. you don't wanna use our money from Cleveland Heights to help people outside the city. And so figuring out what the need is a tough one. And to me, one way to do that would be to do some kind of a grant contingent on the need, or Lynn had an idea of how to do this measuring. Am I saying it right?
I think so, and that's what Jessica's been talking about, which is like, so it starts with some legal clinics so that we see who in Cleveland Heights needs legal
Yeah.
services and what their profile is, because legal aid does incredible work, but the poverty guidelines and then the focus on crime victims leaves out a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I think we'll do that through the legal clinics that assess the need, right? And
I will say one of the other things we do and that Cleveland Heights for Immigrant Rights does is clinics at businesses. So I did one last Monday with a business explaining and churches. We've been working with a couple of the churches that have come up with their own systems of what happens when ICE comes to the door. What do you do if you have immigrant employees? Where do they go? What do you check with the ICE agent on? You look for a real warrant from a real court, not one of these administrative phony warrants they come up with. You at least tell them you don't agree to them coming in. You know, you try to maintain your rights as they violate them. And the reason you do that is if you end up in some sort of court action later, you can use the violation of rights to get you out of trouble, at least temporarily. So, and businesses can protect themselves that way too, because these guys can be pretty disruptive. I mean, that one raid on Cilantro's closed the business down for at least a day. And he had to fish around and find 6 people to replace the 6 that had been put in detention. So, that's another service that if you've got people who want to do clinics, it would be good to do it with businesses and churches. The Church of the Savior and Forest Hill Church both have systems set up as to what happens. Thank you. I don't know if your church does.
Fairmont, oh yeah.
You have one too. I thought
Yeah.
Ryan would do that. So that's 3 of our bigger churches that I know have systems. And that's just something to work. We should probably do that with staff here. What happens when ICE comes around? What do you do? Because our basic policy is try not to cooperate. But that isn't all that easy to do. If someone comes in and flashes a badge that says, I'm from ICE, do what I want. So that's another angle on this, is not just the immigrant rights, but especially if they're your employee or your friend and you want to help them, you need to know how.
If there are churches, we're happy, like I said, to do those type of know your rights, we call them KYRs, those type of presentations. There are a lot of great online resources too, a lot of great videos. If you're in your car and ICE approaches, if you're at home or if you're at work, if you're at school, all those different scenarios and how to respond. But certainly here locally, that's absolutely part of our charge at Legal Aid is to do those type of presentations.
I would just add that there is already among church organizations, there's a group called We Are Many, We Are One. It's 25 congregations across the whole faith spectrum that are collaborating on just these kinds of activities. And Resource Cleveland, another entity, is also collaborating with faith-based organizations primarily to support immigrants who do not, who lost their SNAP benefits and who will not make themselves publicly noticed at a store, so it's a food service. So there's, I think, a whole well of potential in that faith community, along with the good work that you're doing.
So in the spirit of the fact that we chewed through 50 minutes, we started late, so maybe 40. I guess where do we want to go from here? Sort of ask the council members.
Oh yeah, Mayor Petras asked if Todd has any questions. Hi, Todd.
Hi there, everybody.
Hi,
Well,
Todd.
I wanted to first thank Councilperson Cohen and Mayor Petras for inviting me to be a witness to this. It's been very informative. I refer a lot of the residents that reach out to me to legal aid, and I've had great success with that. Just kind of fleshing out how the process works has been very helpful to me. Most of my complaints that come in are housing complaints, and some of them are things like people have not had heat in their apartment for 9 months and they don't know what to do because they're afraid they're gonna lose their apartment. So I haven't yet received any requests or complaints or concerns from residents about immigration law, but I'm sure it's gonna be coming, and this is extraordinarily helpful for me to establish a process within the Mayor's Action Center on how to handle these. And so I just, this is step one in a long process, but I'm glad to have these resources and the support of the administration and the rest of the staff at Cleveland Heights. So thank you very much.
So, Matt, Mr. Chair, could I make a pitch here?
Sure.
Not for money, we spend money. We have on our website a form you fill out. It's www.amisohio.org. People apply, we have our own intake. It's a fairly long form. We want to know why you want the money, what you want the money for, who's in your family, and all that kind of good information. Todd, you can fill this out for people if you want. And
Great,
then it comes to
great.
us and we decide whether we can support the person or not.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, and that should, if you can put us on the website. that'd
Yeah,
be
I was
great.
just going to say, we created this resource page and this seems like something that could be really helpful to people, so.
Yeah, we run into a lot of people. What's interesting about all this with immigration is how much of it falls on people of color and how little of it falls on the Ukrainian population and other folks from Europe. I think we've had one European American or European not American yet immigrant who's from Bulgaria come to us in the whole 5 or 6 years where we've represented hundreds of people. This is just falling really heavily on folks from South America and Africa and the Caribbean and Asia.
So I'd love some guidance from the committee, and the other council members present on kind of next steps. I mean, there is the Catholic Charities that wanted to speak. We probably could engage Ann Hill if we need to from your organization, and give her an opportunity to speak. But it almost seems like we need to have a continuation of this particular conversation.
I mean, I'll say I think that this is a really important first step to making sure that these resources are available in spaces where residents might look for them, like the city website. So I think, thankful to the administration for moving that forward, and to have Todd, for inquiries to be able to direct. I think forming these partnerships officially between the city and the nonprofit, so there's an open door for continued conversation, for working on with Cleveland Heights for Immigrant Rights, having a very Cleveland Heights specific legal clinic, and that's, outside the administration, but, kind of coalescing all of our personal and professional contacts to make that happen. And then I think just us continuing to keep this front of mind for ourselves and understand what we might be able to offer, if it's resources or information, and just, like you said, continue the conversation, but also use our positions to move things forward when it's possible in our power.
In terms of, sorry,
Are you still gonna do those legal clinics with Pat?
We're continuing there. Pat is back. Lynn and I have been in touch, and the Cleveland Heights for Immigrant Rights folks are figuring out organizationally how we're gonna do that, and we're also funneling in other lawyers that have said that they'd be interested, or law students, clinics that might be interested. So we definitely, I don't know if at some point the date yet to be determined how that's gonna be advertised because of, same sensitivity. So, but we're gonna continue that work for sure.
that's my only question.
Any other thoughts on?
No, it sounds like our newest council member's got a good handle with some knowledge of the
Yeah.
I'll
faith
send you what I
community,
know.
so to make
And I
sure
have
that
another lawyer that can.
Great. We're collecting them one by one.
And if you could get with the administration to make sure that whatever information you have, that we also get that on our website would be very helpful.
I just sent a request about a MEAS intake form to have that added, and anything else, happy to pass along.
Did you send it to Ann?
No, I sent it to the webmaster to add it to the city's website.
Mayor, if we decide to have a meeting, let's say in another 2-week period of time, can we invite Todd to that? meeting just so
Absolutely.
he-
Any staff that you think is helpful to have, feel free to reach out to them directly.
Well, it seems like the intake point is with the Mayor's Action Center, and I think from there you can disseminate information, because I think that's where the first point of contact happens, which is just a beautiful model to have for really everything. So I
Yeah,
think
I agree, and I like to have that, this knowledge to start from somewhere to help out. So thank you for including me in this very much.
great. In the spirit of time, I'd love to move on to the next agenda item. Are we okay to move on? So, great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Todd.
Does somebody need the minutes?
I am going to hold on item 3 and move forward with the piece of legislation that we have in front of us, because that is, I think, the most urgent piece that's in front of us. And this is resolution number 38, 2026. This is essentially modifying our agreement with Open SDK. And Mayor, help me here. It looks as if this is just an increase. I mean, we're essentially extending the contract for $24,500. We've already spent money with them. But this is sort of $50,000 framework is being presented to us.
Right, yeah. And in speaking with Director Klinkskill, if there's anyone who's interested in seeing more about this product, she's happy to arrange that. I saw a bit of a demo maybe about a week ago. It was very helpful to see how you can see how certain streets, it's been able to identify hotspots for speeding. And so if anyone is interested, you're welcome to reach out. Alternatively, I suppose that we could, if you wanted in this committee meeting next month, you could see if she could stop by and show something to everyone if it's of interest. If not, that's fine.
So I was actually gonna suggest a special meeting during the day for that and maybe do it during Zoom. So these kind of demos really aren't necessarily time consuming. They just take up a lot of time, trying to fit that in within an hour with all the other stuff. And then having our meeting at 7, it's hard for a staff member who's normally not scheduled to be there at that time. So one of the things in the public, safety part of this conversation was going to, and we talked about this. I had a meeting with the mayor earlier this morning about some of these issues. I was going to just sort of try to pick a time. If during the day is hard, but maybe during a lunch hour, could we do something like that? Maybe is that?
Honestly, for me, it just depends on the day and but if, is this something that we would record?
I think we would record it, Joe.
Doesn't matter, because I can always catch it.
I'm thinking we do it over Zoom if we can coordinate that. This way everybody can see it.
If I might, when we do that, schedule that meeting, I would like to know what happens with the data and an individual car is identified. I'd really like to understand how the whole program works when we do have to be ready to vote on a Monday, so I don't know, because I think there's a timeline involved, right, with this one?
I think that it might be helpful if we had more technical questions, if we were to reach out to the vendor and ask if they could lead the product demo rather than Director Klinkskill, who may not be able to answer all these more detailed questions. So if that would be of interest, we could reach out and schedule that.
Well, it's anonymous, it's basically a big data. It's just, but I think you probably want to hear it from the vendor.
Yeah, from what I saw, it's not individual level data, it's summarized. And the most detail that you can get is like by time of day on like a particular day. So if you are interested in during the 5 o'clock hour on a Thursday, this is what it looks like, but you can't see individual level data.
It's a blob.
It's an average for an hour.
I think I asked this question previously, but I can't remember. Are we using this, are we using it to its full capacity? Like, what has this informed? And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, or I'm just curious, like, what has it informed, or will this be informing the traffic calming?
Yeah, my general understanding, and I saw one short overview of it.
Okay.
But my general understanding is that whenever a speed complaint comes in, for example, this is one of a number of tools that staff members use to assess whether an intervention is needed. So for example, they may send an officer out to observe things for a few hours. They may look at this data to see, okay, does this data suggest that there's an issue? And that it's not the sole thing that folks rely on, but just one of a number of tools to sort of gauge whether speeding on a particular street is an issue.
The memo says that the software will be extended to the police department if desired. So is that something that you're gonna be deciding if the police department's gonna be using it, or Chief Britton will be deciding to use a traffic enforcement component that's built into the software?
So right now, the speed surveys are done by the police. They're the ones who will go out and observe things. And so it would not be a surprise to me if they found it helpful to reference that.
Just as an, they've got a great presentation on their website of this software, urban SDK.com.
Thank you.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we, I can disseminate to the committee the links on how to get to this demo. And we can schedule kind of a discussion with our staff to see how the product is used. Do we want to do that before or after we vote on this?
If they're able to do it this week, because it's only Monday and we're voting on Monday, even if it's done and it's recorded and we can't make it, we could still watch it over the weekend before the vote. That would be my preference.
Maybe just ask the council members to go take a look at this link.
Is that better?
And they're basically, I think this is the product demonstration is online for us to take a look at. If anyone has any concerns about the type of data that's being collected and how it's used, this is pretty incredible, actually.
We can send that link out to everybody, all council.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sure. Sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
So in addition to that, I think we can just follow up via email with specific questions for how it's being used, because that's the part that this isn't gonna give us. And Urban SDK isn't gonna be able to answer those questions. So instead of trying to schedule something in the next few days, if we have specific questions to our staff. Right now, is it just Public Works that is using this, or is planning using this as well?
It's my understanding that just Public Works is using it, but she would need to verify that that's the case.
Okay.
She was the one who, in the conference room, reviewed it for me.
So if we have additional questions, reach out to her.
Yeah, I think that she's able to answer.
Ken Bernardin's not using it at all then in planning?
I can't say that he's not, but I mean, it seemed like Colette was the one who was the primary user.
I'm only wondering if we could use it in the opposite direction, like during snow.
That's what I was wondering, is if this is street conditions in addition to traffic.
Or even if cars are going very, very slow on a street, there must be an issue. Or it's worth,
I don't know like how recent the data is, like over the last 24 hours, this is what we saw.
Right, that's a good one, like immediate versus
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a delay, like, as of 6 months ago, this is the average for this time.
Right.
So I'm not sure.
Okay.
But maybe, again, we could arrange a product demo, I'm sure, with the vendor, if we have more specific questions.
So this was a first reading. What I'm gonna suggest is, I'm not sure we can be able to get a meeting set and scheduled with Director Klingsdale this week. I'm not sure we can accomplish that in a short period of time. I think we have a demo that we can look at. We can set something up based on availability. if we can't get it done in time for our Monday meeting, and if what people have not seen is, I mean, I think we need to have answers to everything. I don't know the urgency of getting this approved. I don't know what the time frame is, but we can put it off for another reading if necessary. And make that determination when we have our council meeting of a whole on the 3rd.
If you wanted to schedule something with the director, I suspect that she'd be able to find time this week. My one concern though is that for more technical questions, I don't know whether staff will be able to answer those. That's why I think that maybe a demo from the vendor could be most helpful. But it's up to council members on what you think you'd like to see.
If there's a demo online, that's as a first pass, let's at least explore that.
That's the first pass, but I mean, it's not like we could really meet and make a decision over the phone or online or via email. I mean, I think we're gonna have to trust, I can put together a process that we could lead toward a discussion. But we still need to check availability if we're gonna try to get something this week. So
if you do not pass it out of committee, it's still going to, unless you reach out to President Kuda and Addie and say that you did not pass it out of committee tonight. So it should not be on the agenda for March 3rd, the second reading. Because it would still remain in committee at this point.
that means it's a whole nother month.
Practically, yeah.
I think I'm the one that raised the question about this originally, and I'm okay with passing it out of committee at this point. I just wanted to know what it was, because originally in the council packet, it didn't have a memo or the contract or anything. So this is much more information than we started with.
I'm okay passing it off to committee. I'm okay looking at the data. I'm okay setting up a meeting with Director Clinksale. I mean, this is our first conversation about this. I mean, I happen to be okay passing it out of committee. I mean, Joe, what do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Craig?
I'm comfortable that we're not dealing with any, privacy concerns that any resident should have that's individualized or anything like that.
We're still reserving the right to vote on this, in a week after gathering relevant information.
Or hold it as a council if it doesn't make sense. So I think that's what we do.
I think this is helpful to have a discussion here, but we don't need to hold it up.
Okay. Councilmember Larson, Vice President, since you set the agenda with President Kuda, is this okay?
Yeah, no, I just wanna, we need to make sure that we're consistent with our practice and our procedure, so.
Excellent.
I'll make sure that they know that it was passed out, cause Addie's working on the agenda right now. And this one was going to be up for second reading, and I can confirm via our discussion that that's appropriate.
Okay, I mean, I think that sounds great. I mean, this is sort of leading into the next item, and I'm just gonna continue with the meeting if we're okay with that. I don't think we have too much more time. And the mayor has graciously, sat down and been here with a couple hours with us already. But one of the things we were discussing this morning, and I hope that you hear from the mayor directly, is kind of what are we doing as far as like traffic safety and sort of protocols behind it. And we've got a couple things that we did talk about. One of them was with this urban SDK piece. But there was also some things with like the radar units that go on telephone poles. You wanna talk about what your thoughts are on that?
For example, we recently spent about $100,000 to improve the safety of North Park and Harcourt. And I'm glad that we were able to do that, but we can't do that for every unsafe intersection in the city. And so my preference is that we spend less money, but on more projects across the city. So for example, those boxes that tell your speed that you can attach to a telephone pole, that costs $500. If we were to deploy 20 of those across the city, I think that might have a bigger impact on safety than spending $100,000 at Harcourt and North Park. So that's like my general perspective on that. In recent years, we've implemented just a few high dollar projects. So for example, on South Taylor, we installed a speed table, some flashing lights. The speed table has since broken or broke and has since been removed. I think that we need to spend less money on more projects. We are also in the process of working with the Transportation Mobility Committee on a proposal that they made. So we've now had several internal meetings, and Councilwoman Larson and Councilman Posh were at one of those meetings last week, I think, if I remember correctly. And we have another one this week where we're inviting in the liaison from the Transportation and Mobility Committee so that we could further flesh that out. Folks may remember that there was a program where if you got more than 50% of people on your street to sign a petition, you'd be put into a queue for traffic calming consideration. There were a lot of people who were interested in that program, but after they were submitted to City Hall, wasn't much done with them. And so we are looking at trying to pull together all of those and figure out what we might be able to do for those people who expressed an interest on their street. So those are some of the and unfortunately, we applied for an implementation grant from the federal government for the Safe Streets for All program, and unfortunately, we did not receive that for this year. That's something that I was really hoping that we'd receive, but unfortunately, we did not. And so, hopefully, maybe in a future year, we might be able to receive it.
But we still have about $1 million of money for the demonstration.
Yeah, that was part of the same program, Safe Streets for All, but it was a demonstration grant. It was $800,000 with a $200,000 match. We did not then receive the implementation, which would have been for even additional money. But there's quite a bit that can be done with that $1 million, and just like you're saying, with tactical urbanism techniques. So those are things with paint and plastic quick build demonstration projects. So instead of doing the curb work to like what was done on Harcourt and that costing $100,000 and you have one, you could do that for, a couple $1,000s with plastic bollards and paint and some other quick build techniques. So there's a lot that could be done with that $1 million, before we're even talking about budget allocations.
Just one thing that I would love to see, and who knows where it falls on the priority list, is I, just driving around the city myself, see a lot of unenforced parking restrictions. And this causes traffic issues like on Euclid Heights Boulevard or Cedar, particularly in bad weather where the plows can't get through. And then also you have people, changing lanes suddenly, et cetera. So I don't know how we tackle this question of how, or where, by the way, parking is allowed, but maybe it should be restricted, like on certain corners.
Yeah.
So I wanna throw that in something.
So a couple things. So I do know that the police department does actively enforce, for example, on Euclid Heights Boulevard, during those peak hours. So I've personally witnessed it. With regard to snow
And I'm not
removal-
saying they never do, I'm
Right,
just,
Is
yeah.
there something that we could do to enhance it? But then also with regard to snow removal, we saw that whenever we issued a snow ban, firstly, the first time we did it was after the snow was already on the ground. So it's like, okay, people are probably parked in place. How many people are actually going to see this and move? So we made the decision to make a go, no go decision in advance of the snowfall so that we could communicate to people that they need to get off the street and increase the chances that they comply. We also just printed a bunch of signs that we will be able to, we printed two different types. One that we can staple to poles. So for example, along Euclid Heights Boulevard, along Cedar, some of these major thoroughfares whenever there is a snow ban. And then also a version that we're going to put under windshield wipers for people who are already parked there to increase the chances again that people stay off the streets. Yes.
I like the idea of spreading the money that we do have available to us citywide rather than spending it all in one or two or three places, because right now, traffic calming, we don't see it.
Right.
Right, for the most part. So is there a way that you will be doing a baseline at that? Let's just say you pick a street over in Caledonia and you do a baseline to determine this is why we need to have this traffic calming here. And then would you follow up to see if it had an effect on what the problem was? Most likely speeding or running stop signs, right?
Yeah, as we were talking about this morning with Urban SDK, maybe it's the case that you could look at a before and then
Yeah.
implement an intervention and then look at it after, I think that I'd have to defer to the staff on what specifically how they'd want to do that.
Yeah.
But it seems like that in principle might be possible. But again, we were trying to figure out, okay, which were the streets that applied for this? I think that they, out of respect to the residents who took time to put together these petitions, at the very least, we need to get back to them and let them know that we, found their application and that we look forward to considering it in
You
some
know
way.
where those applications are.
Work in progress.
Work it out.
And following up on the parking situation, and this is, I think, a problem in our business districts with the removal of the parking meters, that we need to have more defined signage indicating where it is a parking area versus a no parking area, because a lot of people with those parking meters gone don't know that and are parking in areas that should probably be no parking. The other issue that has come up with some merchants is the concern that often employees are parking on the street and tying up, since there's no meter, and tying up parking spaces that they would like to have available for customers. So maybe we should look at, until we decide what we're gonna do about revisiting parking meters, is putting some signs up restricting parking to 1 hour or something like that, or 2 hours during the day to make sure that those parking spaces are turning over for customers.
I have a question, I'm sorry, I have a question. I've been going back through the housing committee proceedings, and last year there was some work that was done on the parking of commercial vehicles on city streets, and I couldn't tell if that actually made it into a legislative.
No, did not.
Okay.
It's still in committee. It's in
So-
your committee.
So there's another piece, card on the table for that.
In addition to the applications that have already been submitted, have you been able to think through whether we're sticking with that process and continuing to collect applications again, changing the process, but some way that's not just, a one-off complaint about speeding that goes to Todd, but some other similar process where we're collecting information from residents that have complaints about traffic safety?
I like that, if you've gotten buy-in from at least 50% of your neighbors, it's, probably the case that it's something that the neighborhood would appreciate, rather than just one resident speaking up, having a speed bump installed, and then neighbors getting mad over that. So I do like that. But I do understand from the staff's perspective that it's important that, at least in part be informed by data. And it could be the case that, there's a perceived problem, but when they look at the data, it doesn't back that up. And so, how we might be able to reconcile those two things, I'm open for discussion on. And if you have any ideas, let me know.
Yeah, I'll go through the Urban SDK, and then ideally we would be able to look comprehensively at the city where there are known speeding issues and not only rely on individuals raising concerns. I think that can be one of many data points that we're using.
Yep. Okay, I have one other item, and that is regarding a conversation I had with the police chief today after I spoke to the mayor, and that is there were some questions the committee had regarding the flock camera system. And I think the best way of handling it, after talking to all the parties, is having, maybe 2 at a time council members meeting, or council members who are interested, meeting with the police chief and their staff, just to get a quick rundown of really how the system works. Because there's a lot of questions out there, and how it's been either beneficial or what can be improved. Just as a data point, and then we can kind of come back here and have a conversation if we think it's warranted. So I just wanted to throw that up there, and I'll be reaching out to everybody individually about that. All right. Any other thoughts before we adjourn the meeting? Okay, well, have a good night, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.